Next, you will need to invest your wax for bronze casting. The first step is to size the wire mesh for the wax tree you've just created. Due to the process, the investment cylinder will likely crack, but the wire mesh will hold it together. The fractures will create small casting errors, but will be easy to clean up later. Cut the wire mesh a few inches higher than your piece, then wrap the mesh surrounding your piece so that you have about 1 inch clearance to the sides. Continue to wrap the mesh around the piece until you've made 1.5 rotations, then carefully bend all of the jagged ends inward so they will not be poking out and become a hazard when handling later. Next, cut some roofing tar paper to cover the outside of the mesh you've created. Secure the paper with duct tape once you're sure it's sized correctly. Finally, bend the top of the mesh flat inside the tar paper tube and carefully lower your tube onto your wax piece. Mix some plaster and pour it into your tube, enough to cover the bottom to create a seal, and let it set. Once that's set, fill the cylinder to the top with a second pour of plaster. Don't try to vibrate the plaster to release bubbles, as you will risk damage to the wax inside. Bubbles are comparatively easy to clean from your casting, whereas a disconnected gate might ruin the entire pour. Once the plaster is set, the cylinder is ready to be prepped for the bronze pour by being heated in a kiln. The tar paper should now be removed prior to the heating, along with the base plates that the wax trees were attached to. The kiln will then be heated slowly to 1,000 degrees. The wax inside the plaster will melt out and at higher temperatures burn out, so you'll be left with a perfect negative of your wax structure. On the day of the casting, the temperature will be lowered and the cylinders taken out of the kiln at around 750 degrees. They will be then taken to a sand pit and stabilized there. Evening out the various size cylinders for height will allow the casting crew to pass the crucible over without worrying about additional collision hazards. The surrounding sand will also stabilize the cylinder's temperature and help to contain molten bronze should the investment shatter during the pour.
Super heavy.
How much more do we have in there?
Maybe like one more.
Enough for one more?
Yeah, 20% left.
20%?
Yeah.
Kansas.
Once the bronze cools to a black color, it is ready for de-investment. The cylinders can be cut along the surface with a sawzall to break the wire mesh, then with some light striking, broken open and the casting freed. Alternatively, the cylinder can be struck with the mesh intact until the plaster breaks away and the casting freed. With hand tools, remove the majority of the plaster that is still clinging to the casting, then quench the casting. The vibrations created from the hot bronze boiling the water around it will release the majority of whatever plaster remains at that point. After that, pressure washing should remove any stubborn bits of plaster, and your casting will be de-invested and ready for further metal working.